UFC 303 goes down this weekend from Las Vegas, Nevada. In the main event, it is now for the light heavyweight championship, Alex Pereira taking on Jiri Prochazka. And I do these always at the start of the week. What are the early storylines? And the biggest storyline here is who's not here. Conor McGregor pulling out of this fight, we now know is because he got a broke toe. And this is those like, are you willing to do the road work at 5 a.m. when you're waking up in satin sheets? If this is Conor McGregor 5 years ago, he is amputating that toe and throwing it at Jose Aldo. But my guy's financially set. He doesn't need to go in there with a broken toe, so he's not going in there with a broken toe. I wouldn't fight anyone with a broken toe, but I wouldn't fight 100% of this roster. That there is not one of them I would want to lock myself in a cage with for any amount of time. But it is frustrating that all of this was going on, and it's like, it was a toe? Really? Like, John Jones's toe was sideways when he beat Chael Sonnen. So, again, not to question the toughness of anyone, but for someone who goes out there and talks about being a warrior and all of that, it just felt very un-warrior-like. So it feels like there is a lot missing from this. But once again, Alex Pereira is here to save the day. And a lot of my talk has kind of been centered around this guy's legacy. I talked about it coming out of UFC 300. Let's just get this guy a heavyweight fight now, right? Like, he called for a heavyweight fight. I don't know why they didn't do it in Brazil. If this guy's going to be fighting on short notices anyway. I just feel like this is someone who is so unique in how he came into the sport, how quickly he has rocketed through things, and is now just kind of the guy who saves big cards. He saved UFC 300. He's now saving International Fight Week. The two biggest cards this company is going to have this year, and he has saved both of them. And I don't think this one really enhances the legacy too much unless this is a fighter who goes out there and just puts an absolute stomping on Prochazka again, much like he did in his last bout there against Jamal Hill, where he just absolutely leveled that poor guy. I don't think this enhances the legacy at all for him, but this is going to be another opportunity to showcase that this is one of the best fighters in the world. For Prochazka, I just wonder how much he has learned since losing to Pereira back at UFC 295. He only has one fight since then, and it was a win over Rakic. And you think about the glory of victory and the agony of defeat. He loses at UFC 295 in Madison Square Garden to Pereira. Pereira's in the main event of the biggest card of the year at UFC 300. Prochazka's on the prelims. That has to be in Prochazka's mind. Like, look, man, and like all this glory you're getting right now, that should be mine if I can go out there and beat you. You took that from me too. So now I am coming to try to take that from you. The problem is, I just don't know if we've had enough time for Prochazka to close that gap. Even on the fighter that we saw Pereira to be back at UFC 295. Now we are all of these ways through. I feel like Pereira is getting better. Now Prochazka is as well, but I don't know if he's closed the gap to the fighter that Pereira was, let alone the guy who is growing now. The one thing that you hope for in a fight like this, I think if you're Prochazka, and it does sound like I'm being very dismissive of Prochazka's abilities. Like, he is one of the best light heavyweight fighters in the world. There is absolutely no question about it. I just feel like Pereira is on another level. And if you are going to come in and pull off the upset, you're hoping that the unique style that Prochazka can come out there with does kind of fluster someone who hasn't had all this time to prepare. The problem is Pereira's prepared and dealt with it before. So I don't think there's going to be anything that surprises him coming into this one with Prochazka, but we will see how much he has closed the gap coming up Saturday night. In the co-main event, Diego Lopes put on a show at UFC 300, and now he gets the biggest fight of his career. Again, on short notice, he goes up against Brian Ortega. And so the real question around this is this too much for Lopes, or is his time now? Because he has been running through fools. And the initial response always for me is, it might be a bit too soon. But when you look at going from Yusuf into this fight, the way he dispatched with Yusuf, it actually feels like a natural progression of things to go in here against a Brian Ortega. So the big question now, coming off of one of the biggest spotlights of the year in UFC 300. Now that spotlight is really focused on Lopes. It's not spread out to 15, 18 fighters like we talked about at UFC 300. A lot of it is going to be on Diego this weekend. How does he handle that? And what type of performance does he put on? Because if this is another big fight, another big performance from Lopez, UFC could have another star on their hands very easily. He's going up against Brian Ortega, who snapped a 2-fight losing streak in a win over Yair Rodriguez. Now taking on another explosive prospect, that is going to be difficult for him. And so for Ortega, the real question is like how much is still left there for a guy who got very close, title contention, title challenger, very talented fighter, but has fallen on some hard times against great fighters. Like he lost 2 in a row to Volkanovski and Yair Rodriguez. Many a man would lose to both of those guys. And then to bounce back with a win over Rodriguez, does a victory here over Lopez, maybe does that even get him back into title contention, but a loss here, and that's just, it's a lot of red on the resume for Ortega. So a really, really big fight that he is taking on short notice here this weekend.